70 to 80% of women don't finish from penetration alone, and most men have no idea, not because they don't care, but because nobody ever actually explained what's missing. So what happens? They keep doing the same thing, thinking it should work, while she stays quiet, avoids the conversation, and over time, the connection starts to fade. And if you've ever had that moment where you wondered, is it me? Am I doing something wrong? You're not alone. But here's the truth, most people won't tell you. It's not about lasting longer. It's not about trying harder. And it's definitely not about doing more of the same. There is one key piece most men are missing, and once you understand it, everything changes. I'm Dr. Doris Cole. I've spent over 15 years working with men and couples, and I can tell you this clearly. The problem isn't what you think it is. So if she rarely finishes or never does stay with me, because in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what's going wrong and exactly what to do differently. And before we go further, if you want clear, honest answers about things most people avoid talking about, make sure you're subscribed, because this channel is about giving you the information most men never get but absolutely need. Research published in the Archives of Sexual Behavior tells us something that every man in a relationship needs to hear. Women orgasm approximately 65% of the time during partnered sex. Men orgasm approximately 95% of the time. That is a 30% gap, and it has been documented consistently across decades of research. Here is the critical finding. That gap does not exist because of biology. It does not exist because some women cannot orgasm. Research confirms that women who have sex with other women orgasm at rates comparable to men, above 85%. The gap exists almost entirely in heterosexual partnered sex, which means it is not a female problem. It is a knowledge and technique problem, and knowledge and technique can be changed. The Anatomy Truth research by Elizabeth Lloyd confirms that approximately 70 to 80% of women cannot orgasm from penetration alone. This is not a minority. This is the majority of women. The reason comes down to anatomy. The clitoris is not the small visible structure at the top of the vulva. That is just the external tip of a much larger internal organ. The full clitoral structure extends internally, with two legs running along the pubic bone and two vestibular bulbs running alongside the vaginal walls. The external tip contains over 8,000 nerve endings, more than any other structure in the human body, and it sits outside the vaginal canal. Penetration stimulates the internal portions of the clitoral structure. For some women, this is sufficient. For the majority, it is not. The external glands requires direct or indirect stimulation for orgasm to occur. This means every time you rely on penetration alone, you are working with roughly 20% of the anatomical picture. The other 80% is left completely unaddressed. Understanding this one fact changes everything about your approach. The arousal window research consistently confirms that women need an average of 20 minutes of sustained arousal before orgasm becomes reliably accessible. Not 5 minutes, not 10, 20 minutes minimum. Here is why this matters neurologically. Female orgasm requires sustained parasympathetic nervous system dominance, the deeply relaxed, deeply aroused brain state where the body is physiologically ready to release. Getting to that state takes time. It requires a progressive build without interruption, without rushing, without pressure. Most sexual encounters do not allow enough time for this build to complete. The arousal window is cut short, and she never reaches the neurological threshold where orgasm is genuinely accessible. Research found that women who engaged in 20 or more minutes of arousal-focused activity before penetration were significantly more likely to orgasm and significantly more likely to orgasm multiple times. 20 minutes is not a luxury. It is the minimum requirement for the majority of women. The 5 real reasons she never finishes. Reason 1. Relying on penetration. Alone, the majority of women need direct clitoral stimulation to orgasm. Penetration without it leaves the primary nerve pathway completely unstimulated. What to do? Incorporate direct or indirect clitoral stimulation into every intimate encounter. Manual stimulation before and during penetration, positions that allow natural clitoral contact, or deliberate external attention as a primary focus rather than an afterthought. Reason 2. The arousal window is too short. Moving to penetration within the first 5 to 10 minutes almost certainly cuts her arousal window short before orgasm becomes accessible. What to do? Commit to a minimum of 20 minutes of focused arousal before penetration. Her body requires that time to reach the neurological state where orgasm is possible. Extended foreplay is not optional for most women. It is the foundation. Reason 3. Changing technique. At the wrong moment. She is building toward orgasm, the arousal is climbing, and you change what you are doing. Different pressure, different rhythm, different location. The build resets completely. Think of it like climbing a staircase. Every time you change technique at the wrong moment, you push her back to the bottom. What to do? When something is working, stay with it. Read her signals, breathing deepening, body tensing, responses increasing, and when those signals tell you something is working, maintain exactly what you are doing until the build completes. Reason 4. Performance pressure is shutting her down. When a woman feels her partner needs her to orgasm, the pressure activates her sympathetic nervous system, the stress response, which is the direct neurological opposite of what orgasm requires. She can feel your need for her to finish, and that feeling shuts the whole process down. What to do? Remove the expectation entirely. Tell her out loud, genuinely, that there is no pressure, that the experience itself is what matters. That single statement, delivered honestly, lowers her sympathetic activation and allows the brain state that orgasm requires to return. Reason 5. She has never told you what works. Research confirms the majority of women have never directly communicated their specific orgasm needs to their partner. They default to silence, to protect their partner's ego or because the conversation was never opened. He keeps doing what does not fully work. She keeps hoping it eventually will. The gap quietly grows. What to do? Open the conversation. Ask her warmly and without pressure what feels best, what she wishes there was more of, what she has wanted to try. And when she answers, listen without defensiveness and act on what she tells you. Her answer will be more specific and more actionable than you expect. The communication fix. Do it outside the bedroom, not during sex, a relaxed, neutral moment, the couch, the kitchen, a walk, somewhere without performance pressure, open with vulnerability. Tell her you want to understand what feels best for her, that her experience genuinely matters to you. Then ask one specific question. Is there anything I could do differently that would feel better for you. Then stay completely quiet until she finishes answering. Do not interrupt, do not explain, do not justify. Just receive what she says and let her see that you heard it. That experience of being genuinely asked and genuinely heard is itself one of the most powerful things you can do for her desire going forward. The 44 plus specific truth for men over 44. Everything we covered today becomes both more important and more achievable. More important because as relationships mature, the communication gap around sexual satisfaction tends to widen. The longer the silence has existed, the more it needs to be deliberately broken. More achievable because the slower arousal patterns that come naturally with age work entirely in her favor. You are less likely to rush, less likely to move too quickly through the arousal window, more naturally inclined toward the pace and patience her body actually requires. The men I work with clinically in their late 40s and 50s who apply this knowledge, who slow down, extend arousal, incorporate clitoral stimulation, and open, genuine communication, report some of the most dramatic improvements in their intimate relationships of any group I work with. The foundation of trust and care is already there. The knowledge was the only missing piece. If she rarely or never finishes, it is almost certainly because of one or more of these 5 reasons. Not her body, not your body, specific, identifiable, fixable factors. Penetration alone is not enough for the majority of women. The arousal window needs at least 20 minutes. Consistency of technique at the critical moment is non-negotiable. Performance pressure shuts her nervous system down. And she has not told you what works because you have not yet asked in a way that made it safe to answer. 5 reasons, all fixable, starting with your next intimate encounter. If this gave you something genuinely useful, drop a comment below. Tell me which of the 5 reasons you think has been the biggest factor. I read every comment personally. Share this with a man who needs to hear it. The men who need this most are almost never the ones who find it on their own. And if you are not subscribed, right now. Every week on this channel, real research, real clinical experience, real answers. Hit subscribe and the bell. I'm Dr. Doris Cole. Stay sharp. I'll catch you in the next video.